Good morning, everyone. A big issue in today's world is global warming, and over the years, global warming has taken its toll on Alaska in various ways. Glaciers have begun to melt all around the state at a very rapid rate. Permafrost that once covered the land and kept it together is now melting, causing major erosion and washing away of structures and trees and natural habitats. Natives all over the state are having to face these issues head on. So what can we do to prevent this, and what is to come in the future for Alaska? The thawing permafrost it's began to cause a revival of deadly diseases and viruses because they were once buried, and they have been buried underneath the ground and underneath this permafrost for years and years now. And as this permafrost has melted away and eroded away, we see mammoth carcasses and these ancient fruits that contain large amounts of CO2, greenhouse gases. And as you see right here, with the erosion all along the beach lines and all along the mountain edges of Alaska, there's a major erosion. This ground was once held together by that permafrost. And as you can see right here, there's a house that was once standing and now is completely collapsed and caved in. And according to Alex, in Alaska alone, the destruction of buildings and infrastructure due to the permafrost thaw over the next century could cost more than $2 billion, according to a 2017 study. The releasing of these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere from these mammoth carcasses, ancient fruits, and dead trees that have been buried under the ground for so long, they're released up into the atmosphere, and it's thickening and absorbing into our ozone layer and causing basically an insulation effect in the atmosphere, which is keeping the Earth warmer and warmer as decades go on. With this glacier melting is one of the biggest issues in the Alaskan area because of global warming. And these ancient glaciers have begun to melt in such more of a rapid rate over the last decades because of the fact that with this insulation of the Earth and the heating of the Earth, where the Earth used to be much cooler, they're beginning to melt now and causing runoff and contamination in all freshwater sources around. Flooding and destruction of natural habitats has been an effect of all of this runoff glacier water, and it is where natives used to live and where animals used to once thrive. They are now in a state of, I guess you could say, panic, evacuation, or distress because they don't have their freshwater sources, their natural cover, or the land that they once had. The way that the runoff water has contaminated these freshwater sources is, for instance, with the permafrost as well. Whenever these bacteria and viruses that are buried so deep beneath, and the salt water from the glaciers melts and runs off into this water, it's contaminating the water by placing large amounts of CO2. These bacteria, these viruses, and anyone or anything that consumes this water has either been killed, hospitalized, or become very sick and has done permanent damage to them. According to Shadell, the more carbon we have in the atmosphere, the more warming we have, and that creates feedback. And this feedback is the exact reflection of these glaciers melting, this permafrost melting. So Mark Vail, a 60-year-old inhabitant of Alaska, said, "Bottom line, the glacial rivers are growing and the glaciers are retreating and diminishing." And the native Alaskans are having to deal with this head on and directly. They've not only have they been exposed to these deadly viruses and diseases and become sick, it's with pregnant women, with young children, they've been affected in very negative ways. And it's a chain reaction. It's beginning to spread because over decades and centuries, this has continued to build and increase. Homes and properties have been destroyed. And as you can see right here, as I said, as the Earth is beginning to increase in temperature over time, like here in 1913, we had a very large glacier covering this entire side of the mountain. And you see again here in 2012, glaciers almost completely depleted to nothing. And I know I visited Alaska in 2011 for the first time. I was 8th grade year of middle school. And I went back there 6 years later, and I noticed that the glacier that I had once seen that was massive, covered the entire side of the mountain, had shrunk at a very good amount. And I was very surprised by this. And as I was saying before, with these, with the melting of these glaciers, natives are having to deal with this in ways that are very difficult and a struggle for them, because places that they've cherished, land that they've owned for centuries, that is ancient and historic to them, has been flooded and destroyed. And according to Alex, again, warming the ground leads to erosion, sinking, and structural damage. Frozen organisms, including pathogens, can infect living hosts and also thaw. The future of Alaska has to hold as these effects of global warming in Alaska continue, and as they continue to increase the thawing of this permafrost, this erosion, this carbon dioxide emission, all of these results are being multiplied by great numbers over the years. Clean water is being reduced down to a very dangerous level in areas of habitation. The weather is warming to a dangerous level for wildlife in certain parts of the year as well. You take a look at grizzly bears and then the elk and all of the animals in this area that are so used to these freezing cold temperatures. And over the years, although some forms of wildlife may be able to adapt to this, there are others that are very essential to the wildlife in that area and a part of the food chain that are beginning to die off and go extinct. According to Drapkin, Shishmaref, an Eskimo village on an island off northwestern Alaska, is beginning to completely fall into the ocean. And these natives that have lived there, this is ancient grounds for them. So, as the years have gone by and this water level has come up, their land has turned to complete mush and slush. It's become to a point where they're having to move and migrate to completely different areas. Some steps that we can take as a society is to try to slow the rate of this global warming. And the way we can do that is, for instance, industries are working on creating electric vehicles. And although this may be a pricey method, at the same time it is a very efficient method, because it prevents as much CO2 from being emitted into the atmosphere and creating that insulation effect. Now, biofuels are another thing. With these biofuels, it's another way to prevent and reduce the emissions of CO2. And solar panels. I've seen solar panels all over Alaska when I visited, in cabins and homes and businesses. They are, in a way, they're price effective. They're high, but at the same time, they're very efficient in gathering this energy and preventing from using these harmful chemicals into the atmosphere and carbon dioxide. As you can see right over here, I have an example of one of these electric cars that are being used a lot over in Asia, and they've been used very heavily over there. And as statistics show, you can see in that area that carbon dioxide levels have gone down over time. These solar panels right here, as I said, many people have them, and they're all over the place, and a great method to use. So I would just like to close out by saying that global warming, it's truly placed a huge negative impact on the beautiful state of Alaska and the habitat and all of the natives living there as well. Over the years, it has become increasingly worse and much more noticeable. And unless there are steps taken to prevent this, then statistics will continue to grow to dangerous levels. And as a result, harming an Alaskan environment as well as the wildlife that lives there. Thank you.
Okay.
All done, all three.
Mm-hmm.